Welcome to the Dr. Geo podcast. I am your host, Dr. Geo, where it is my intention to help you with your prostate health and how to live better with age. We have our guide, Dr. Alan Christensen, here with his book. Alan, thank you so much. The Hormone Healing Cookbook, man. Congratulations on yet another fabulous book.
Thank you so much, my friend. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. So tell me, what was the impetus behind this book? So you've written numerous books on thyroid function and dysfunction and how to heal with that. You had a reset, I believe, diet book, if I remember. Now you have this hormone healing cookbook. So what you're implying here is what we eat has an impact on our hormones.
In a big way.
Tell me more.
Yeah, so impetus, you asked about that. So two big things. The last three books were thematic, ways to reset certain issues. You mentioned that, yeah, thyroid issues, weight metabolism, adrenal health, and ways to do that with a dietary program. And those included some basic meal plans and some recipes. People did those, good feedback. And then the questions afterwards were, hey, can I get more recipes? So that was one big impetus. The other one was that the last book, The Thyroid Reset, I spent about a year and a half, almost like a monk, just doing medical literature reviews. I spent so much time on that. And I came across all kinds of studies showing how just simple, common, everyday foods in like not crazy amounts could have radical benefits on hormones besides just thyroid health. But they didn't belong in that book, right? So yeah, all these data sets that I wanted to share that were helpful, and a lot of folks wanting new recipes. So that was the things that collided.
Right. And so, obviously, my audience, primarily men. And, when you think male hormones, all you think about is testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, DHEAS. But men have thyroids too. And they have other hormones that women have, and women have testosterone too, and men have estradiol. So tell me what you know about, how men can optimize their, it is going to be very general, their hormone levels, let's just say, testosterone, and certainly from a food perspective.
It's a funny thing. I put a lot of thought into that when I was putting the book together. And some of the first iterations, could have been pretty nerdy about which hormones do what and which ones are off for you. But over time, I don't know, I've come to think that we know a lot. I mean, we collectively in the medical world, we know a lot about what does what, but there's so much that we don't know. And there's some things we can measure, but there's so many things we can't measure about hormones. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of ways in which someone may have, a hormone level that doesn't fit their clinical symptomology.
Alan, in other words, the labs look good. They're within normal range. So yeah, Alan, we have a situation where, we do blood work and the hormones look great, right? Within normal range. Of course, we can, testosterone, the range is between 300 and 1,000. So, that's a wide range, right? But let's just say, I don't know, 500, but they still they have symptoms. Same thing with thyroid. What are the signs that we're looking for to determine, the hormones on a blood panel looks good, but no, you're having, hormonal imbalances. What are we looking for?
We're looking for 5 big symptoms. First one's weight. And this could be can't drop a pound, or it only comes off with extreme efforts, or just comes
Despite
right back.
what they do. Dietarily, exercise.
Try real hard and it doesn't want to budge, or it shoots right back. Next is fatigue. You run down, can't get through the day, don't enjoy exercise, don't recover well from it. Big thing there. Sleep. Can't get to sleep, don't stay asleep throughout the night, poor quality of sleep. Hot flashes. Really excited to talk to you and your audience about this. One thing I saw in the book is that there's so much data about how this is a bigger symptom in men than is often talked about. And we know this with certain conditions and certain treatments, but even apart from that, a lot of guys suffer from these. And then last up would be brain fog. So memory, enthusiasm, recall, creativity. Yeah, those are the top 5 things. If you know you've got one of those, then there are some ways to make a difference.
But we don't know necessarily what hormone. I mean, this could be any. This is thyroid. This is testosterone. This is free testosterone. This could be any. So we don't know just from those 5 symptoms which hormones are most imbalanced, but we know there's an imbalance there somewhere.
So this is pretty cool. The literature that I came across would look at people that had these various symptoms and would then do dietary interventions and watch outcomes. And some of that literature would take people who the symptoms were there for known reasons, fatigue after a stroke, fatigue after chemo or something. But in many cases, there was no clear explanation. And that's not to say that you shouldn't get one when one's available. We never want to ignore symptoms and ignore your medical health. But if you've done some due diligence and these things persist, even not knowing any deeper issue about what's doing what, there are things that you can do to help.
What are those things?
Well,
The time has
those
come.
those things are things
Other
you put
than,
on your
other than,
fork.
I want people, and I really do. Look, you're one of my most trusted colleagues, and when you say, "Hey, Geo, I have this book," I automatically get it because I know you and I know the effort that you put behind your work. So I want to let my audience know that the Hormone Healing Cookbook, it's good. I've looked through it. Excellent recipes. I haven't tried many yet. I have to actually get in the kitchen and do them. Excellent recipes, I'm excited to get going on that. So, what are and if you can focus a little bit more, if you can, to my predominantly male audience, what are the type of things that they should look for? What are the type of things they should eat? And what are the type of things they should stay away from if they want to optimize their hormone levels? And if there's a direct link with one hormone versus another, let us know.
Yeah, all about symptoms, improving symptoms. If you're
So
run
we're not
down.
really looking here to say, hey, eat grass-fed red meat all day and you'll increase your testosterone. That's not necessarily what we're trying to do here. This is a person that may not know their hormone levels, or their hormone levels, they went to their doctor, they're normal, quote unquote, but they still feel unwell. So we're treating symptoms. It's almost like traditional Chinese medicine. You're treating symptoms, not necessarily numbers.
And this would be someone who's on some hormonal treatment as well, but maybe that helped to some extent, but they're not totally there. Yeah, if there's symptoms, you can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Simple example, like in the case of beets and fatigue, there's a lot of studies on people who are tired for particular reasons. I mentioned a couple. There's also studies on those who are tired for no clear reason. And there's those who are trying to boost their energy apart from being tired, like
Mm.
athletes. A lot of research on beets. Blood doping was in the news a while back. Our guy Lance got in trouble, and everyone was doing it. Yeah, so VO2 max, how well your body can convert oxygen into energy. It's an important metric for endurance athletes. It's
Sure.
also important for all of us who want to do a lot of stuff in the day and be active and enjoy ourselves. So blood doping, forcing your body to make more blood, taking blood from outside your body. Yeah, you can raise VO2 max 10, 15%. We now know that if you eat beets in the right ways and the right frequency, you can raise VO2 max by like 15 to 20%, like more than blood doping.
Wow. Wait a minute. So how many how many beets do we need to eat to increase our VO2 max by how much? 15 to 20%?
Yeah, it takes about two a day, medium sized beets. Of course, their size varies. And it actually helps if we chew them up. Kind of a weird thing, but they've got to interact with
Huh.
saliva in ways. Yeah.
So juicing beets, which and you can correct me if I'm wrong, my concern would be that it's very high glycemic. So if I'm juicing beets versus eating beets, those are two different things. So A, would you discourage people from from drinking beet juice? And B, is there any efficacy to drinking it versus eating?
Well, it seems there's a big efficacy in chewing it, letting it mix with your saliva. I've used beets as a performance enhancing substance a lot for myself as like just an
Wow.
amateur athlete. So with beet juice, it can help in those ways. You got to swish it in your mouth. Your teeth are gonna look funny if you do that.
Ah,
Like really funny.
right. They're gonna look a little bit tainted, more red. Yeah. Any concerns with the glycemic and the amount of sugar in beet juice versus eating beets for you?
It's an awesome question. So the word sugar means one thing to a chemist and one thing to a dietitian slash nutritionist. To a
Yeah,
chemist, anything that's a carbohydrate is a sugar, right?
that's right.
And in a lot of cases, that word gets used across the board like they're all the same. But I'm here to tell you that beets ain't Twinkies.
But is beet juice more like Twinkies than beets?
So it's more quickly absorbed, and
Yeah.
it's also super rich in anti. And in the big scheme of things, it's all context. It's all the context of someone's total diet. How much food are they getting? How much do they need? How well can their bodies take up glucose? And yeah, if someone is harmed, if someone's at a state to where their glucose tolerance is so shot that some beet juice is going to screw them up. The problem's not the beet juice. The problem is their glucose tolerance.
Yeah, sure. It's a good point. Beets. I think that so there's more nitric oxide from consuming beets, which, if you have more nitric oxide in your body, many good things happen, certainly to men, including lowering blood pressure. And I think that's welcomed to many men, certainly not all. Some already have low blood pressure, but also erections, because you need nitric oxide to get erections. So are there any other benefits from eating beets and increasing nitric oxide levels?
Boy, you listed a bunch of good ones. Yeah, vascular health is greatly improved, which also benefits brain function. Yeah, blood pressure regulation. And that's the awesome thing about food, is that food's not a drug. It can give benefits like a medicine, but it won't force your blood pressure down if it's already on the lower side. If it's too high for varying reasons that can be benefited, it can help with that. But yeah, it's not going to create side effects because of those same benefits.
All right, so two medium-sized beets a day.
Easy trick. I got a great recipe for beet cookies. You can make up a batch and just have one.
Beet cookies.
Beet cookies. Yeah.
Man, you make anything cookies. I love it. Anything. And that's in your book.
That's in the book.
Oh, I can't wait. That may be the first recipe I try. If you consume a lot of beets, you'll eventually see it in your fecal matter and your stool, right? And so then people need to be alerted that may happen so they don't freak out. Is that right?
Totally true. Yep. You can get caught red-handed from handling beets. You're going to see some red stuff in the toilet afterward. And yeah, not worrisome. It's a compound called betaine, just as simple as the name sounds. And we hear a lot about methylation and the body working better chemically. And that's another big benefit. So the body works more efficiently in a lot of ways from them.
I have to say, I think beets are the most undervalued fruit vegetable that exists. I focus a lot on broccoli and cauliflower for prostate health, but I think beets are, I don't see people talking that much about beets. And I think there's I would call it a medicinal food even.
Totally. Weird thing, but they're like a staple ingredient in my oatmeal. I make up batches at a time. And
that is weird, Alan.
It's really good. I'll do like beets, parsnip, squash, have some things diced up and cook that in the oatmeal and some cinnamon in there. It's really good.
Man, I knew you had the goods with the actual practicality of eating these foods. What's another one? What's another good food?
Boy, an awesome one that people don't think about a lot is figs, yeah. And thinking about hot flashes. So it's funny. So I can always say, like, here's this thing that's thought to be the active constituent. I don't really totally believe in the whole active constituent thing, because so often we take them out, they don't work the same way. So 5-methylcoumarin we think is the active constituent. The active constituent in figs is really figs. And the active constituent in beets is really
I thank you for saying that, Alan. I appreciate that. I really do. I get caught up in this medical world quite a bit. I work for an institution and so forth. And okay, so what's the active ingredient?
Right.
What is the standardized dose?
Right.
And I get caught up in that, I have to admit. And I think you hitting the nail in the head, because I think that we're getting overly caught up with that. How many active ingredients are in figs and in beets and in all these things? And they work synergistically. They pull and push, pull and pull. That's why they have benefit without side effects, because they are a food and not a drug. So I appreciate you saying that. And thanks for figs is another one. I don't eat figs. I have to eat more figs.
Well, so cool thing is hot flashes, and definitely good studies on women, probably similar effects on the mechanisms of action in men. But yeah, a couple can reduce hot flashes by 50% or more. And also
probably not due to, it's not a phytoestrogen type of thing, right? It's probably due somewhere in the mechanism of the brain somewhere.
It's thought to be more related to vascular constriction of the brain. Yeah, not strong phytoestrogenic effects. I'm happy to talk about phytoestrogens as well, but not big ones from figs, no.
So then men, certainly, actually, I'm going to recommend it. Some men with advanced prostate cancer, they are on hormone deprivation therapy or androgen deprivation therapy called ADT. And they have hot flashes, and so they go through that. Hot sweats and night sweats. I'm wondering if we can do, if we can prescribe, eat more figs, and maybe that will help. I know that men who are not on ADT, also a few, also suffer from hot flashes after a certain age as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, how many figs a day?
This is, same number as the beets in this case, two a day, fresh or dry, doesn't matter. They can. I do like to have foods cooked and mixed into things. Back to your point about like quick absorption. Yeah, I like you to absorb things gradually. I like foods to be in the context of a meal. So yeah, you can use them a lot in ways. I made a good recipe for carob fig balls. That's one more easy way to have them pre-made and portable and ready to go. And
Wow. I remember back in the day where I used to, what did I do? I used to insert a walnut in the middle of a fig
yeah,
and just enjoy that. So it gives you a crunch as well, and
yeah.
I'm a sucker for a good crunch, and all the health benefits as well. I remember doing that. That was good.
That's an awesome blend. So walnuts were a superstar in the book for fatigue, along with beets. There's a compound, walnut oligopeptides, and basically walnuts help the body clear metabolic wastes. So
Hmm.
lactic acid, blood urea nitrogen, uric acid, walnuts help you clear that stuff faster, and real dramatic benefits on just improving overall energy production.
Love it. One quick question on figs I have to ask, and I know you're going to say, Gio, what are you reading? Are you crazy? We always concerned with too much sugar consumption, so that's why I asked about beets and so
Sure.
figs versus dry figs. There's how that's metabolized in the body is probably different. And again, we look at glycemic index.
Mm-hmm.
Are we overthinking it? Or should we just eat figs or dried figs and just call it a day? And is there a toxic dose of dried figs, beets, anything like that? Anything that has typically a high quote unquote sugar content?
The whole sugar thing, yeah, I go back to the whole thing about processed and unprocessed for starters. And then I
Yeah.
go back to really like the context. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea about sugar, carbohydrate totally can create problems for a lot of people. But this is something to where this is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not that straw is bad. It's that the back was already full.
Mm,
So that's the difference here. If someone's at a place to where they can't metabolize one more bite of fuel, then anything you throw on is bad. It doesn't matter what kind
right.
of straw you're talking about. So it's really not a matter of picking and choosing the kind of straw. It's about really managing the fuel load.
Got it. Understood. So, what kind of scenarios and illnesses would somebody have to say, you know what, I'm not going to eat figs or beets? Is a type 2 diabetic? Uh, uh,
Personally, my work about that, like with metabolism reset diet, it's more about unloading that camel's back and letting the back heal rather
yeah,
than like trying to because really it's not a food, it's the
yeah.
total load. So it's not like swapping out one kind of straw for another, because what happens is that for most of us, if we just go on some simple rules of this is good, this is bad, and we do nothing differently, this is like taking a few straws off a broken camel's back. It won't heal
Mm,
it.
that's
It's
right.
it's still got big load there, and it may be a tiny smaller load, but it's not going to heal it. So you got to like unload it a bunch, let it heal up, and then you can carry straw around again.
Lovely, lovely. I have to ask you about organic versus foods that are not organic. For example, so we know that organic foods are have less pesticides than herbicides, and we want
Less
to.
synthetic ones, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how and we know about the dirty dozen. So when I recommend things and some people just can't get organic with everything, I said, look, get the dirty 15 or so, and that's organic. That's from the Environmental Working Group website, and I'll put that link on the show notes. Do we need to be concerned about that thus far with the foods that you mentioned, walnuts, beets, and figs?
So high level, I guess if the choice is consuming commercial produce or not consuming produce, if that's a choice that someone's
Mm,
making. So we've got a lot of studies showing that people that eat produce, fruits and veggies, are healthier than those that don't.
yeah.
And pretty
Irrelevant
darn
whether it's organic or not.
pretty much zero, pretty darn close to 0% of those studies were looking at organic produce.
Mm,
So we know people that add produce to their diet are healthier than those that don't add produce to their diet. So the net effect of commercial produce is positive. And if someone wants to go further and think about organic, there's a lot of things to think through that way. No drawbacks, but certainly some things to consider. But as far as whether someone's saying, should I add these to my diet or should I avoid them because I can't find organic, that's pretty cut and dry. You want more produce in your diet.
period. End of story. Yeah.
Period. End of story.
what if we have more options? So I have options. I can go to the local store and get produce. I could go to the farmer's market and get produce that was grown near me and that's seasonal. Or I could go to Whole Foods and get, um, apple that's organic that came from New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best choice?
You gotta rank your priorities. What are the most important values for you? Is it a matter of supporting local industry? Is it a matter of convenience? Is it like fresh stuff that's important to you? Is it cost effectiveness? So you can all make a lot of choices, and those depend upon which of those values are highest for you in the moment.
My priority is most nutrient dense and what's best for my health. How
Mm-hmm.
would you rank them then? That scenario.
I've seen a fair amount of data arguing about nutrient density, and it's not a clear consensus that way.
Hmm.
There's it's a funny thing. So we think about pesticides, and there's pesticides that we add to foods. There's organic pesticides. There's quite a few of those, and some of those are among the more toxic pesticides, like copper sulfate, for example. And then there's pesticides that are naturally occurring within the plants. And one big group did an analysis to say, okay, let's map, and this is actually done back in 1990 when the total pesticide load was a lot higher than it is today. And they said, let's map out all the known pesticides we find in these foods and give them a relative weighting given their toxicology and given the dosage and put a number on that. And
Hmm.
now let's find the pesticides that are naturally occurring in the plant to do the same thing. Let's consider their relative toxicology if they were taken in isolation, how much is there, put a number on that. How do you think those numbers compare?
Man, not a whole lot.
Well,
What's
it
the
was
answer?
the answer is about 1 to 50,000. So we
One
get
to
so
50,000.
we get about 50,000 load of pesticides naturally occurring in the plants. And here's one more reason why I don't get too hung up
Wow.
on active constituents, because the active constituents that help us are by and large things. So plants have nutrients. They got macronutrients. You got fuels like carbs and fats. You got building blocks like proteins. You got
Yep.
micronutrients. You got vitamins and minerals, things you need for
Sure.
reactions. Then you've got phytonutrients. Now, the term phytonutrients is a generous term because pretty much all these things we call phytonutrients are phytotoxicants. They are insecticides, they are pesticides, they are herbicides that are naturally made for the plant. We
Sure.
happen to have evolved and adapted to where these things, our bodies respond in useful ways to them. The little speck of them creates this tiny trigger of a danger response, and that helps our bodies work better in different ways.
Fantastic. So takeaway: the fruits and vegetables have their own herbicides and pesticides that actually probably are protecting us as well as protecting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't want the synthetic versions. They're uh, hormone mimicking agents in some of them and so forth. And let's just say again, we have access to um, local farms. And I'm gonna local farms, organic from like Whole Foods, but the food came from far away. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I typically tell patients, if you get it locally, get it locally. Don't worry if it's organic or not. Typically, they are organic, but they don't want to play the game or the cost that's related to that stamp. And local is better, and seasonal is better. All things being equal, is that a good
All,
approach?
all good stuff. Yeah.
All right. What's another food that helps optimize possible symptoms that are related to hormonal imbalances?
I think there's like two big drivers of ill health, and one of the biggest ones is just fat in the wrong places. And people are
Mm,
concerned about that for their own their own personal concerns, cosmetics, that's all fine, but health, 2 grams of fat in the pancreas, like a couple of paper clips worth, that can make someone diabetic. It's a
mm.
huge difference. So things that benefit the breakdown of toxic fat are super important.
That's also considered visceral fat.
This is funny. There's all these different buckets of fat. When one fills, the next one fills. And the most dangerous one is intra-organ fat. And to be really precise, it's the,
Intra-organ fat.
it's the fat that's between the cells of the organs. And visceral fat is like the last stop before then. So visceral fat is only dangerous if it's spilling over into the organs.
Wow. Okay. How bad is subcutaneous fat? So that's the fat underneath your skin, where maybe around the belly area, wherever.
Best we can tell, it's pretty harmless. Funny
Ah,
thing, but the whole regime that sumo wrestlers go through, they make massive amounts of that and like none elsewhere. And these guys are obviously massive, but they're also ridiculously healthy. They've got like no metabolic distress.
that's interesting, actually. You would
It
think they
is.
do. You would think they have a lot of metabolic distress, but that's not the
Yeah.
case.
No, they're athletes and they're in good shape. And
That's a great point. I was just having this conversation with Dr. Siddiqui. We're talking, urologist, urologic oncology. We're talking about diet, and I was saying, and we were making the association of how fat in the body is associated with higher increase of prostate cancer, right? That is less. So the Warburg effect necessarily is not a thing here, like it is in many other cancers. So the fat, prostate cancer metabolically is more lipophilic. And he says, when you see somebody big, then you say that's a conversation. It's like, all right, lose weight. And I said, there's a lot of thin, fat, slim, fat guys out there.
yeah.
Apparently there's many that are fat, slim,
Yep.
or fat but metabolic, right? Because it's not the fat necessarily; it's the metabolic aspect of the fat that can potentially occur. But in some cases, like sumo wrestlers, that may not be the case.
Yeah, at a group level, most people that are way too heavy do have some more toxic fat than those who aren't, but there's a lot of exceptions. Like the sumo wrestlers are a big example of that. And you mentioned there's also a lot of folks who are not too heavy but can still have toxic fat. So yeah, that happens.
Alan, how can we measure intra organ fat? Is there a way of measuring that?
There's a lot of ways. We talk about like body mass index, body weight. There's some advanced things like imaging studies that can show that. There's my favorite single metric though is height to waist ratio. There's a
Height to
pretty
weight, so not
height.
waist to hip.
No, 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 no. Height to waist.
Interesting.
So we've got a lot of good data points around this. And to be really precise, it's the belly button. So it's how many inches around the belly button compared to one's height.
Okay.
And the biggest thing that displaces belly button girth is liver mass. So yeah, the main thing going wrong is there's too much triglyceride, too much fat building up inside the liver.
And what should that ratio look like?
Yeah, so the easiest number to think about is half. So if I were to use really good posture, I might get away at 72 inches, So my belly button, that can't be more than 36 inches. So yeah, so half is an easy thing. Probably like 0.45 is healthier, but half is a red flag.
Wow. I've used waist to hip ratio. I use it all
Mm-hmm.
the time, but I've used less height to waist. So height to waist ratio is correlated, if it's higher than 0.5, to more intra or organ fat.
Yep. Yeah, fatty liver, metabolic distress, cardiovascular risk, diabetes complications, all sorts of those things.
I guess for the first time in my life, I actually want to be, well, no, I think I want to be taller for that ratio to look good, because I think I need to work on my, I need to start working on my winter. We all gain a little bit of weight in the winter. Did you gain weight in Minnesota? I hope so. You need some insulation over it. It's really cold.
I stay warm pretty easy. I do good in the
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna do that. Actually, I'm gonna do that measurement. Thanks for sharing. All right, give us a couple of more foods that can help us optimize our hormone health.
Well, the food that discussion was leading up to was onions. And
Ah,
cool thing about this book, this is stuff you've heard of onions before. These are not a revelation. And
right.
you eat onions every so often, but how much and how often and at what point do they help? So a pretty big study showed that if you can get an extra 20 grams a day on a regular basis, you can see a 10% drop in this toxic fat around the organs and within the organs. So
20 grams a day
yeah,
of onion. So how many? So what does that look like in terms of just real food?
well, 30 grams is an ounce. An ounce. A typical medium onion is going to be about like 2-3 ounces. So this is not a lot.
Wow.
One of my favorite recipes in here, I've got a healthy French onion soup that won't take all day in the kitchen, and it's really good.
Ah, I love onion soup.
I do too.
So I'm about to upset you here. Does it have anything to do with the quercetin in the onion?
So that's a funny thing. They actually did this in a study. They
No,
looked
Geo, it's
at,
the onion. Nothing. It's not quercetin. Onions. Onions.
well, they asked that question in one of the studies, and they had some versions of onion that were really high in quercetin and some that were not, and they compared the effects of the two of those. And it was basically a wash. So if you
Huh.
read the study just at a surface level, the take home was that, oh, quercetin didn't help. But if you read the depth of the study, like everybody who ate onions got better, but it wasn't different from one group to the next.
Right. Jeez. I love that. So a lot of onions recipes here in the Hormone Healing Cookbook. One last question about onions. Does it matter if it's white onions, red onions, shallots? Any
The
different
physical
varieties?
mass probably matters. I love shallots. They're ones in which we use in smaller quantities. Same thing for scallions. We use smaller quantities of those. So the total mass probably matters. And past that point, if you're talking about white, red, or vidalias, not really a clear difference. I like the sweet ones because I love onions, but some people have a worse time with like their eyes getting irritated than others. I suck at that, but the sweet ones I can do pretty well with. But regular yellow or white onions, yeah, I'm just a mess. I can't even function.
Alan, give us one more food that one of your top your top 5. We already gone through at least 4. What's another good one to take care of these hormone related symptoms?
Here's a cool one. It's a funny example too. So, plants make hormones. There's a lot of ways they help our hormones, but they actually make most of the same hormones themselves. And in some cases, we're just ingesting them by eating these plants. So pistachios have insane amounts of melatonin. They actually contain more than melatonin supplements often contain. But here's the wrinkle. When you take melatonin supplements, what they do, good, bad, or sideways, they do rather quickly. But pistachios don't do anything quickly. But in the hours after ingesting them, they make a huge difference on your body's own output of melatonin when your body would want to normally.
And does it matter if it's raw or roasted?
No, it's pretty heat stable. Yeah, great question.
Wow. So should I eat, a handful of pistachios a couple of hours before bedtime?
So this is the cool thing. You don't have to time them in any special way. If you add them into your diet anytime during the day, you'll do a better job with your own melatonin production when your body wants to make melatonin.
Wow. And so how much do I need to eat daily to? By the way, there's been
How much have we added to your plate so far here?
Exactly. There is research, and I have to look that. It's been a while, showing those that consume more pistachios had less erectile dysfunction than less than those that consume no pistachios or less pistachios. Which is interesting, actually. I remember, I think I wrote about that in one of the books that I participated in. Any idea why that is not a nitric oxide scenario? Any idea what that would be?
In terms of
why would pistachios help with erections?
I had heard some theories about their amino acid profiles or some of their bioflavonoids, but yeah. My favorite response to why something works now is just elfin magic. If you want a mechanism, just call it elfin magic. That's how the Keebler elves make all those cookies overnight. So that's, if we know something happens, we don't know why it happens. It's elfin magic. It's elfin good enough magic. For me.
We were talking with the same person, Dr. Siddiqui, because he wrote a paper, primary author in 2014, where he correlated vasectomies to prostate cancer. And I was like, how? And he's like, I think the answer would be if he used the term elfin magic. Elfin magic. What's the mechanism? Elfin magic.
But how did these elves make all these cookies overnight? Oh, elfin magic.
How did these elves do all these vasectomies? Or have all these vasectomies done to them? I don't know. All right. So here's a holistic but realistic question. It is, I find it, and maybe you gear me in a different direction. I find it challenging to cook myself. Life, kids, blah, 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 responsibilities. So I'd rather just go somewhere and get something, go to one of my favorite sources and get something. Now, I do know that my wife is a great cook, but I don't want to put all the burden on her all the time. And I do know that the more you have control of your own food, the better the food it is for you than going outside. What's a good, holistic, but realistic method of getting into the kitchen and doing the stuff yourself where it's not overly consuming in terms of time and so forth?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So, anything you do differently, there is a change process. There's no way around that. So you
Yeah.
can't get over the fact that when you're doing something different, that it does take more at first. Past that point, however, I would argue that when you can cook on your own efficiently, it's way faster than it is to go places for your food. So in the
Mm.
book, I talk about batch cooking and I give a lot of batch recipes. And then the recipes themselves take just a matter of minutes when you have some basic things put together already. So here's what's coming up for lunch in a bit, Gio. So I've got some chicken that's not cooked, but it's just chopped up chicken, and you can buy it chopped up easily as well. You can buy it cooked, and then I've got some rice that's cooked up, and I've got some broccoli that's in florets. So that those things are done. Those things took just minutes put together. I'm going to take a pot of water, add a quart of water to a pot. I'm going to get that simmering. I'm going to throw in a tablespoon of kosher salt. Now I'm going to take a bulb of garlic, not a clove, a bulb, the whole thing. We can spend a lot of time skinning and peeling garlic, right? You can even take the stems out if you want, but I'm not
That's
going to do
right.
any of that. Take the whole bulb and just chop it in half. One cut, all done. I'm going to take a knob of ginger. I'm going to chop it twice, all done. Throw those in the water, throw the chicken in, simmer for 10 minutes, pull out those big chunks of ginger and garlic, lunch is ready. Just one example. And
Wow.
that's the poached ginger garlic chicken that's in the cookbook. And it's so amazingly good. This broth that you get is incredible. And you spend like no time prepping anything.
So the chicken has this garlicky, gingery flavor to it
The
as
chicken
well.
the chicken cooks in this broth, and it's
Yeah.
incredible garlic and ginger. We know those are healthy foods, but to have good versions of them, they take time to prep, to peel and mince and stuff. I don't do any of that. I just chop them once, throw them in the pot, and then take out the big chunks when it's done.
And do you consume the liquid as well?
Yeah, not all of it necessarily. I'll take a warm thing of some brown rice and then add the chicken and some broth over that. I'll throw the broccoli in with it too, and I won't always drink all the liquid, but it's a real nice broth that goes with it.
Man, so this book has over 80 recipes in
Hmm.
it that will help with fatigue, brain fog, sleep, insomnia, all these things. I can't wait to actually start applying many of the recipes. It's called the Hormone Healing Cookbook by Dr. Alan Christensen. Alan, any final words?
Just super brief about the cookbook. So you can just grab it and find recipes that appeal to you. You can choose recipes based on symptoms. They've all got a code that shows which symptoms they're the best at. And if there's one of those 5 symptoms, the weight, fatigue, brain fog, uh, sleep disturbances, or hot flashes, if one of those really sings out to you, I've got a 14-day plan for each of those. And it uses
Oh,
recipes that focus on that. It's got shopping lists. It walks you through all of it. So yeah, you can have it be very specific if you want.
and where would they find that?
Anywhere you get books, all the
Oh,
all the
so
bookstores.
those recipes that are specific are in the book.
Yeah, so all the recipes are in the book, and then the book also has a 14-day meal plan for each of those that highlights recipes that are particular for that symptom.
Excellent, excellent. The Hormone Healing Cookbook by Dr. Alan Christensen. I'll have it in my show notes. My friend, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you on. You're the first. Are you the first? Yeah, you're the first naturopathic doc. Can you believe that? You're the first ND on my show. Eric Yarnell is coming, Joe Pizzorno, hopefully, but it's harder for me to get MDs on my show than NDs, my own
That's
people. So
that's
I
funny.
appreciate, I appreciate it.
Well, you're doing a great thing here, and I'm happy to be a little part of it.
Thank you, brother. All the best to you and your family.
You
Much
too,
love.
Gio. Likewise.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Dr. Geo podcast. You can watch all episodes of this podcast and much more by subscribing to my YouTube channel on youtube.com/Geo Espinoza ND. If you love what you heard today, you can help by leaving a 5-star review of the podcast on Apple and Spotify, as each review helps us reach more men who are serious about improving their urological health and how to function better with age. And for the latest research and actionable takeaways in the world of men's health and integrative urology, sign up for my newsletter at drgeo.com. I'll see you next time.